Today's episode of Camp Code is the final episode in a 4-part series all about capturing what it means and how to cope with being a camp director at this moment in time during the global pandemic caused by COVID-19. Episode 75 of the Camp Code podcast examines the topic that I have been waiting all summer to explore with my co-hosts, taking care of your people. Our camp communities and specifically our staff have had their lives turned upside down, and many of them did not get to experience the routine and comfort of camp this summer. There is nothing more critical right now than taking care of your people. So join us while we talk about it.
Brought to you by Go Camp Pro. We have created and are dedicated to this podcast because we believe that staff training is one of, if not the most important part of your job as a camp director. Staff training is what prepares your staff to care for their campers, to feel confident in their skills, to do their jobs to the best of their ability, and to learn along the way. A well thought out and intentional staff training will help you in more ways than you can imagine, and we need to help each other bring our very best. And I'm excited to be joined by my co-host today. So let's do a round of introductions. Beth, will you start us off?
Yes, of course. I am Beth Allison. I am a co-owner of Camp Hacker and Go Camp Pro. I was a camp director for 15 years, but now am a camp consultant. And my focus is intentional leadership training and solid and supportive community.
And Gabrielle.
Well, my name is Gabrielle Raill, and I'm one of the camp directors of Camp Waro. And Camp Waro is a camp in the Laurentian Mountains of Quebec, Canada, and we focus on creating a positive female community, and we do that while we speak in French and in English.
Right on. And my name is Ruby Compton. I'm the Chief Exploration Officer for Ruby Outdoors, which, by the way, I just have to say for a second, there's a beer company that's doing a contest for somebody to become their Chief Exploration Officer. I was like, that's my title. I did that. Anyway, so that's my title. And
Copyright. You should get copyright.
I'm mad about it. Anyway, because it's a cool job. But basically, I as a supporter and friend to camps across the world. And specifically, I work in Western North Carolina. There's about 60 camps within a 2-hour radius of where I live in the heart of the Blue Ridge Mountains. And today's topic is taking care of your people during COVID-19. Camp people are often naturally caretakers. We take extra steps to make sure the folks around us are well taken care of and have their needs met. So where do we start with taking care of our people right now? Beth, we're going to start this conversation with you.
Okay. Well, this has been a tough year for all of us. And for many, we haven't seen our staff in person in over a year. If we've been so lucky as to run this past summer on our site, our staff have had more pressure, more stress, and more responsibilities keeping campers safe than ever before. Add into all of this, their lives have been turned upside down. Many may have lost loved ones or jobs or financial assistance or the opportunity to go to school in person. And our world is hurting like never before. And our people are trying to navigate it in ways that are less connected than ever before. So anxiety levels for everybody are through the roof. And I find that the people I'm in contact with are scared or angry or mourning or frustrated. And we're living at really high levels of stress for an unprecedented amount of time, which we were just not designed to do. Everyone I've talked to is struggling in some way. And this stress and anxiety is causing all of us to have less patience, less time to focus on anything but what's right in front of us. So when the world needs more kindness, more reaching out to one another, more thoughtfulness, we're often seeing less. So all of that being said, how are you caring for your people? What are you doing for the staff of 2020 or those that would have been your staff if you were able to run this summer? This is the time of year to create a plan, a schedule, an ongoing commitment to engage and connect with your people, and to role model how we as youth development professionals care for one another all year round. So before you dig in, I really encourage you to take an opportunity to get a pulse Ask key members of your staff if you can interview them really briefly to find out what they need, what they're struggling with, what things camp could set up that could help. Do they feel they need to debrief the summer, the end of camp, even and quite likely, especially if they didn't get to be there? Would that be better in small groups or as a whole staff? Would they like a monthly online Zoom call with all of the people to share or catch up or see friendly faces or talk about camp or talk about the world and all its issues, or simply forget about all that for a while? Could they benefit from webinars from experts who could help with anxiety and stress or coping skills or positive mindsets? And if so, do you have alumni or parents or donors who are social workers or doctors or life coaches who could do these webinars for you? And quite likely at no cost to you, because your camp's budget is probably a great source of stress for you right now. Would they like to receive a card in the mail from you once a month? If you have a lot of staff, who could you enlist to help you make that task easier? How about a care package in December at holiday time? Stickers, camp swag, food. Food is always appreciated, and especially by camp staff. So I'm going to leave it there for now, but I have a lot of other ideas that I will talk about in rounds 2 and 3.
Awesome. Gabrielle, what are you thinking about right now when it comes to taking care of your people?
I think this is hard. I think as camp individuals, I think we live to take care of other people. Our campers, of course, and of course our staff members. And for me right now, it's tough because I feel like what we have been doing, or what I have been doing, is taking care of others since March. And I'm in September, and I am feeling like I just need to turn everything off. It's hard to reach out. I'm also quite introverted, and so that's where I need to recharge in that type of way. And I think about my staff, and I think about what they need, and I get blocked by the fact that I have to take care of myself as well. And right now I'm thinking about taking care of yourself so that you can take care of your staff. And I think that that's okay. And we did do a podcast on how to take care of yourself. And if you're listening to this podcast and you heard the title, you're probably looking at how can you take care of your staff. And I'm just here to say I have a couple of things that I think might be helpful, but I'm also here to say that it's okay if you're feeling like you just need to take a break. Mm-hmm. And maybe you want to reach out to somebody on your team that can start the brainstorming of taking care of your staff, or even somebody on your team or an alumni or a couple of alumni that would like to listen to this podcast to help reach out to your staff. Camp is a home away from home, and for some people it is their home. Mm-hmm. So we can't ignore them, but primarily we can't ignore ourselves. So for me, it's about listening to yourself. And if you're having a hard time reaching out to your staff, then reach out to somebody that you know that can help them listen to this podcast, take some of these tips, but also know you don't have to do it all. Just a reach out, just a message is enough for our staff members to know that you're thinking of them.
Gabs, I appreciate you sharing that so much. And I can't tell you how many times I've said over the last 6 months, and I'm going to sound like a big jerk saying this, so I'm just going to give you all that information, that I'm really grateful I wasn't a leader through this, that I wasn't trying to lead an organization or lead a staff. And it's not a matter of thinking I couldn't have done it. It's a matter of, oh my gosh, what an impossible task. There's just impossible options and impossible decisions to make. And so much in the world and so much that is hard. And then you're helping carry this community through it too. So for everyone who did that this summer, like, my hat is off to you. I want to know how you did it, because it was a monumental feat. And if you haven't taken the opportunity to accept that and absorb that, then I hope you will. I hope you'll take that moment to pause and pat yourself on the back, regardless of whether you feel like you did it well or not. You did it. And that is a lot more than what many folks, me included, can say. You carried a burden that is quite large. And so that brings me to my first point, which is recognizing and allowing space for grief. And we, the three of us, actually were a part of a Women in Camp call where we essentially had kind of a wake for summer camp, and not to take away from folks who have passed away and have had to deal with funerals or not having funerals in the time of COVID, but to recognize that not having camp or not having camp that we thought we were going to have in summer 2020, there is a lot of grief that is carried with that. And there's a lot of grief in our world right now. So I would consider, if I did have a staff right now, I would consider finding some resources on processing grief and sharing those with your staff. Sheryl Sandberg has an excellent book about her dealing with the process of losing her husband and the immense grief and what that was like and how to talk about it and what people said that was helpful and what people said that was not helpful. And I personally believe that everybody should have to read this book, because I think we would all do a better job being empathetic supporters of each other when we are navigating grief. And to recognize too that grief is not linear. And we said on a recent episode, we're recording not too long after RBG passed away. And I had a year 2019 of a lot of grief. I had a lot of loss that year. And RBG passing away threw me right back into it. And it was like, oh, hello, familiar feeling of just irritable and miserable, and I'm gonna crawl under my covers and just not be in the world for 24 hours. And it was terrible, right? And recognize that our staff are experiencing cycles of this, and that nobody's grief or experience is worse or better than anyone else's. It's all valid. And so if we can offer some space for folks to process, to understand and be able to articulate a little bit about what's going on and what they're feeling and why they're experiencing it, I think you'll provide a really big service. And what's cool is with camp, we have the ability to frame it around camp. It's the whole inception thing. We can frame, we had grief around camp not happening this summer, and this is how we're dealing with it. But that can be easily transferred to other parts of their lives. All right, Beth, what else have you got?
So I'm going to take us in a bit of a different direction. And this idea is obviously not for everyone, but there is a lot of validity in it. So why not ask some of your return staff if they would like to volunteer to sit on a think tank? So I've been doing a lot of research recently about volunteering. So of course, if you've got some money set aside, you can certainly offer to pay them for their time. But these days, the importance of volunteering has come to the forefront again. And psychologists talk about the incredible and amazing ways it helps us to de-stress, to be less anxious, to reach out to others, and to feel like we're doing something that matters. So don't hesitate to ask. Those who would like to and feel that they have the time will be thrilled to help out the place that they love. You may also choose to ask specific people rather than putting out a general call. You know your people best, so you likely know who you would trust to do this. Just remember to respect their boundaries if they say no, or front load with them ahead of time that saying no to volunteering for a project is totally, utterly fine, and it doesn't impact them in any way being hired for next summer. You're just offering an opportunity, and it's a great way to talk about the importance of volunteering, and it doesn't have to be at camp. But this particular people have a lot of expertise in how camp runs during the summer and likely in the off season too. So why not offer some of them who are interested some problem solving activities? So you can ask people to come up with a list of issues that's been happening at camp, either pre, post, or during COVID, and things that might need some reworking or new ideas that they think could benefit camp. So in a non-COVID year, our staff think think tank group came up with a way to make opening day friendlier and better. And they came up with ideas for non-counseling staff to walk around with aprons filled with crayons and paper and small puzzle toys to help entertain the younger siblings who weren't staying at camp while parents are busy talking to the nurse and so on. They created a guided tour map to give families who arrived early, and it had a bit of a treasure map in it. So of course there was a treat at the end, a treasure of warm cookies in the kitchen. And they really thought it through and made it more efficient for parents, more enjoyable for kids. And so our families understood what kind of intentional thinkers we were. Just really one small example. So use their brains to help them come up with these issues, maybe ones you've never even noticed yourself, and then you can meet with them and you could call the list and decide which ones they can begin to find a solution for. And if you have a lot of people who want to do this, you can divide them into groups and have each group work on a separate issue. Give them some deadlines and set them up to meet on regular intervals. And I would also meet up with each group periodically along the way just to make sure they're doing okay and that they're not struggling with anything and that people don't need to say, I need to bow out and aren't. And then have a date when you fill in other full-time staff members when they can be present to hear those presentations of possible solutions. So it's just something that they can work on, that they can give themselves to. And of course, if you're doing this, you want to announce it on social media and make sure your staff get the credit for that. This kind of accolade tells your staff and families volumes that you hire outstanding people, that you trust your staff, that you're always striving to improve, and that they can be excited about what's to come. So again, we don't ever want staff to feel like they have to volunteer for these types of ideas. We just want to be able to offer them opportunities if they feel like it might be something they'd like to contribute to and be a part of to make camp better for the future and to keep themselves connected to each other.
Love it. Love it so much. Gabrielle.
My staff this summer, so I had a sort of a skeleton frame camp this summer with some staff members on camp, and we focused on site development, camp development, which would be programs and updating updating certain camp things that we needed to update, and then professional development. And professional development was really twofold. It was about, of course, them learning more about camp and how they can contribute, but of course, even more importantly, how this helped them in their outside lives of camp. And we really wanted to provide that for them because things are so unknown. And one of the things that I think they really appreciated, or they really seemed ignited, was quote unquote real talks. And one of the things that I would think that would be really helpful for staff members right now is having real talks with them about Black Lives Matter, about white privilege, about dealing with COVID and safety and your family, your parents, your grandparents. We know that there's certain people in our lives that aren't necessarily respecting some of the things that we're doing with COVID, such as wearing masks and containing to our own bubbles, et cetera, et cetera. Our staff members are wheeling just as much as we are in all the things that are happening, and having real talks. Use that language, real talks, with your staff members, and host Zoom sessions with them and facilitate a deep conversation that challenges them, but also gets rid of some of their anxiety, because they get to hear what other people have to say. They learn from it, and they can gain a little bit of perspective. We don't need to be gentle around our staff right now with what's happening. They're being bombarded with things that are so tough. So having real talks with them and creating that space where you front load what it's going to be like and what we're leaving with, and not in the sense of educating, but just talking, real talks, is something that I think we can do for our staff this year.
I love it. And I think you're right that especially in a world where there's so much question about who to trust, that to be able to offer some space for real conversation, and that this is a brave space and a space where you can speak up and ask questions. And if we don't know, that's okay. And we're not going to judge. That's really different from what we experience in the rest of the world right now. So I think that's really smart. All right, my friends, we're going to take a quick break, but when we return, we hear our final round of best advice for taking care of your people. Today's episode of the Camp Code podcast is brought to you by 5 Minute Fridays. 5 Minute Fridays is a professional development program delivered to you in bite-sized chunks to your inbox each Friday. Hear from Beth Allison, Travis Allison, Matt Hansberger, and me each week with our best camp director hacks so you can level up your skills as a camp pro. And it's budget friendly with monthly subscriptions for less than $10 a month. And subscribers have input in future videos, so you will get your questions answered by our expert team. This year, make a routine of professional development part of your week and find out more at gocamp.pro/5minute-Fridays. That's 5, the number 5, 5-minute-Fridays. Welcome back, friends. And we are continuing the conversation about taking care of our people. And we've had some awesome ideas shared so far. And Beth, I know you've got some more in your bank there, so let's hear them.
Okay, so I want you to go back to questions that you can ask yourself to set you and your staff up for success this fall and winter. Can you create challenges for your staff? Like getting outside and hiking or riding or whitewater rafting or staying inside and baking or reading a book or taking cool photos, whatever you like, and get them to post their successes of these challenges on your camp's or your staff's Instagram page. Can you use this time to teach camp skills? So maybe once a month, can you send out a learning module for them about how to help kids with their anxieties, or how to help engage campers who are withdrawn and struggling, or how to make back pocket games more exciting? Anything you can think of. And again, can you use alumni to create one of these short learning modules? Nothing like seeing one of the greatest staff of all time at your camp, talking to them on their computer and sharing their best ideas and your info. Once you have this list, all the stuff that you're going to think about, all the stuff that you're going to ask advice of staff that you know would be willing to contribute, get your calendar out. Organize things so that something is going out to them weekly for the whole school year. It does not have to be big every week, just so you know. Just keep in touch, connect, engage, bring a smile to their faces. And then once a month, you do something a little bit bigger, like a webinar or a card in the mail or a game of online camp bingo. They need us more than ever before. And not only does it show that we care, that we believe in the growth of the whole person, but it also helps keep camp in the forefront of their minds, especially when it comes to hiring season. And it shows them what kind of an organization they'd be working for. It tells their parents what kind of an industry we are, that this is not just a summer job, and no, they don't need an internship on a resume. And if you are putting some of this info out there into the world, it shows campers and your families that yours is a camp they want to send their kids to. Win, win, win. So be intentional with your ideas. Plan it out. And as I said, weekly could be an Instagram post. It could be a quick email message. It could be anything small. And then once a month, do something a little bit bigger. So don't make it something that's going to take all of your time or make you feel like you can't accomplish anything. It's not supposed to be that hard for you. And again, get a team of people who can help you, people who would really love to get in and do that sort of thing if you are not in the headspace right now to be able to offer that. Take care of your people, but take care of yourself. It is what camp folks do best.
I love it. I just want to write a blog post that's, 25 things you can challenge your staff to do this winter.
Totally.
I love it. See, something like that. It would be really fun.
Yeah.
It'd be awesome. All right, Gabrielle, any other thoughts from you on this topic?
For me, it'd be just sort of create a shared group space. So when I was in university, I did an online course, which I failed because I was all by myself. And I was like, oh, my course, that sounds amazing. And it was, because I didn't do very much in it. And that's because I didn't have that accountability of going to school and seeing the teacher and et cetera, and learning in person. And so right now, a lot of our staff members are doing online school and doing that homework. Showing up for the classes are tough, but even tougher is the actual homework itself. So maybe creating a space so that staff members can do shared work is going to be very beneficial for them, not just for community, but also getting their work done. I think also for some of the staff members that I know I have who just graduated from university are having a hard time finding a job, creating a space for them to do independent projects together, keeping themselves accountable. You know, we do this at camp all the time, you know, goal setting, making sure it's achievable, it's exciting, that you have resources. Imagine you know, if one of your staff members has a great project and you can pair them up with an alumni as a mentor, but they meet every, you know, twice a week for an hour and a half. You set up those goals at the very beginning. What are you trying to achieve? Is that realistic, et cetera, et cetera. So giving them a space for those staff members that maybe don't have jobs, don't have education to fall back on to keep them occupied, why not challenge them to come up with a personal project that they're interested in learning or accomplishing, and they keep each other accountable during that time, and even going a step further and getting them connected to mentors that are part of your alumni team, and so that they get to share what those projects are and get them connected that way. So there's so many opportunities for our staff members to work together, and it really just takes, you know, a Zoom chat or a Skype chat to get that going.
I think it's all about connections.
Absolutely.
Keeping those people connected and helping them get connected, especially if they haven't been able to be together in person this past summer.
Yeah, and at the same time, you know, it's getting, I think really as camp professionals, all we really need to do is to create that space and say, okay, team, what makes sense out of the space? Is this a 6-week situation? Is this a 1-week situation? What do we want? What are our norms? You know, et cetera, et cetera. Get them to create it themselves. You're just bringing them together. And
That's right.
And I really think that this is, like, as you said, Beth, that this is connections of community.
We let them run camp for 8 straight weeks.
Yes.
We can absolutely
Yes.
give space and let them do the work with it.
That's right. You don't need to develop it. You can just start it. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Hold the space. That's
yeah.
Awesome. Oh, good stuff. Good stuff. My last tip for this episode is something actually that Beth already mentioned, but I want to reinforce it, which is handwritten notes. We know at camp that mail is like gold. It is the best when you get mail that isn't bills. And so I want to encourage you to carve out some time. And if it's not you, again, someone else on your staff, if that is what makes sense, to write to some of your staff. And maybe it's not everybody. Maybe it's just some of your key leaders to say, hey, we really missed you at camp this summer. Hey, I really loved having you here in this space this year. That's something that, and I've talked previously about like having other jobs. That's something that the restaurant job that I've been working this year, they've actually done a really incredible job at, is having just a little surprise note that shows up in the envelope with my paycheck that also says like, we're really grateful for you and we're glad you're here. And it means so much. And that's something that I've been thinking about personally in my own life, wanting to carve out some correspondence time in my week. So yeah, some of the days it's going to be just answering emails, but to actually make time and prioritize time for writing handwritten notes to folks to say that I'm thinking about them, or a little update on life, you know, whatever it might be. But that token of actually like writing it down and taking that time and putting a stamp on it, it means a lot. And so I hope that that's something that you will consider doing, even if it's just like send one letter, you know, even if that's one note, that's one more opportunity to create a connection point, but also to let folks know that you're thinking about them. And I think that that's what is particularly tricky right now, is we are physically distanced from one another. And so to open up my mailbox and there be a note from someone that they were actually in some point in time thinking about me enough to take a piece of paper and a pen and write something down and put a sticker in the envelope, you know, and
definitely a sticker.
Always a sticker. And that showed up in my mailbox. I mean, it brings a smile to the day. And it really shows that we're thinking about you. and think about, is that something you want your staff? Because that process feels good too, to be the person doing it, not only the receiver, but also the giver. So think about, do you want to engage your staff in some sort of letter writing to your camp families or to partners in camp, or to each other, right? How might that look? But handwritten notes are a really, really beautiful thing. And I can't speak enough to how important correspondence is right now. The last little piece I'll say on that is, as a leader of your community, I can't stress enough how important it is to have some real talk about what's going on in your camp. And whether that looks like handwritten or a typed out note or a blog post, but just offering a little bit of a window to your staff of what is going on with camp, because they're worried about it. They are stressed. They know that a lot of things are uncertain. And even if you're telling them that things are uncertain, that is more information than no information at all. So make sure you're keeping your staff in the loop to what's going on at camp. And even if it's the decisions that you're facing. And some camps did this remarkably well going into the summer, and even through the summer. But now's not the time to let up with that. Let's continue to keep our staff and our people in the loop of what's happening.
100%, Ruby.
Just communication, over communicate. That's my staff would tell you. That's the number one feedback I give. Over communicate. My friends, any other thoughts you want to share on this before we wrap it up?
I don't think so. I think we've covered it all. Just make sure you're taking care of your people the way that you always take care of your people, with them in mind, with their needs in mind. It's people before programs. So don't get out there and create something, that you want to do with your people and you think it's so amazing, but you haven't asked them if it's what they need or what they would like to do or what they have time for. Don't create something that's going to make you a miserable person. Because if you're taking care of your staff, you do it by taking care of you too. So make sure that you're around next summer for them, that you haven't burnt yourself out. But to think of ways that you can care for your people that make sense for you, for your community, and for them, but also don't hesitate to ask others if they would like to help you. And I guarantee you there are people out there, alumni, board members, parents from days gone by who would love to give you a hand. So don't hesitate to ask them to do that. They would enjoy that. And we know that when people give, it makes them feel good. And we need to feel good. So just don't hesitate to ask, of course, by front loading with, it's okay if you say no and you don't have time for this right now, because I totally get that.
I love it. I wonder about asking your camper families if that's a possibility, saying like, hey, write a note to your staff, because we want them to come back next summer. We want to know that y'all are thinking about them. And if I was a staff member and I got an envelope that had 5 notes from campers, even if they weren't my personal campers, it would be, I would just melt. I would melt in the road.
Yeah. And it is something that the camp that I used to work with, they did this past summer. So they ran virtually, and they, at the end of the summer, the alumni committee, we put together a gift package for all of them. But what we did was we reached out and asked for their camp giant, so the person they looked up to, which we sneakily got the information for, if they would write a letter to the staff member, and a camper from the virtual camp program wrote to them as well. So they got 2 letters and a book and some, of course, camp stickers. But I think the letters meant the most.
And so many of my staff members just lit up when they were contributing to campers, to their families.
That's right.
And I think giving during this time is equally as helpful as receiving. So I really do. I love that idea, Ruby, about secretly asking your families, maybe a newsletter, because you wouldn't want to post it on Instagram or Facebook because your staff would see it. But for families to see that, how cool where families see, wow, they really care about their staff. And you're right. I think our staff members would love to receive a letter from campers.
Well, my heart feels a little better right now. I don't know about you all. And mainly that's because I know the recap is next. So Let us know. What did we learn today?
So much. And my my cat's licking my leg because he's like, it's time for dinner and not recap time. So here we go. A recap for today. So most importantly, take care of yourself before you take care of others. And but we do need to take care of our staff. So recognize that you might need to take a step back, but hopefully there are people around you, such as alumni or older leadership team members, that can help take care of your staff members. And here are some of the ways to do so. So what is your plan? What do you want to do? Maybe, good idea, ask your staff members what they want, and perhaps they can contribute in creating that calendar. Speaking of calendars, create a calendar of care/challenge. Consistency is so helpful. When you know something is coming around the corner, it creates excitement, it creates community, and it also shows that you care. You can also ask alumni to create webinars that can go within your calendar. And also recognize a lot of us are going through grief over our summer this summer. Whether you did have camp or not, it was different than other summers, and we need to take time to process that. And to help you process that, you can look at Sheryl Sandberg. She has a great book out that would be really lovely to listen on Audible or even read on your own, or even create a book group with your staff to read that and talk about it. That's another way of giving to your staff members. But grief is not linear, and talking about grief is going to help with your staff members to frame what's going on with them in their lives. You can also do real talks, talking about tough stuff with your staff members, because they are thinking about it and having a safe space to talk about those things where there's no judgment, and they can be brave in asking questions and even come up with solutions. Give them agency, gives them power, gives them a sense of community. And we can also do things such as shared groups and even study groups. Don't forget to volunteer, create think tanks. And at the end of the day, when you're sitting in front of Netflix, just maybe having a sip of wine, take out a pad of paper and handwrite notes to your staff members, because they know and you know that when you write a handwritten note, you're truly thinking about them. So first, take care of yourself. And then at the end of the day, just take it easy and reach out to somebody that can help you with your staff, because they need you. We all need you. Thank you so much for listening to our podcast today.
Thanks, Gabs. And we want you to get involved with the podcast. You can tell us your thoughts on this episode by using the hashtag #CampCode. You can also tell us any topics you'd like for us to discuss, any guests that you recommend we have on the show, any great leadership training tips that you have to share. We'd love to hear from you. We are all about sharing in this industry. Also, if you have found this podcast to be useful, please leave a rating and review for us in your podcasting app of choice. Your feedback helps keep the show going, and we love our reviewers so much that we are going to be sharing some highlights here. So Beth has another review read today.
It is my pleasure to read this one. Each Camp Code episode teaches me so much about the industry and gives me tons of ideas. I often find myself going back and forth between laughing like I'm with my friends and quickly scribbling notes. It's an invaluable resource. So thank you, Allison, for writing that for us. We appreciate you very much.
So if you'd like to hear your review read here on the podcast, make sure you leave a rating and review on your podcasting app of choice. Next, we want to make sure you know how to be in touch with us. And so, Beth, how can folks reach you?
At gocamp.pro, that's our website, or directly at beth@gocamp.pro. And I'm on Instagram at topazfaye.
And Gabs?
You can reach me at Gabrielle Raill on Instagram or Twitter, or you can check out where I work at waro.com.
Rock on. And if you want to be in touch with me, you can email me, ruby@rubyoutdoors.com. More likely you'll get a response on Instagram at rubyoutdoors. You can also follow me on Twitter at rubylen85. And Beth is going to tell us what our next podcast is.
We're going to talk next about how to start interviewing when we still don't know what next summer looks like.
Yes, I am excited to learn on that one too. Our final segment on each podcast is a best practice for leadership training, and we would love to hear some of your most memorable moments or most effective tips. You can tell us what they are using that hashtag #CampCode. And Gabrielle has our best practice this week.
So many of us might be doing some of our staff training online. And for me, this is actually a wonderful opportunity to practice our presentation, visual presentation skills, which I absolutely adore. And so for these type of online trainings, why not use a visual presentation that is color coded? Use a vibrant yellow or orange or blue, all of it in that color, except for maybe the text that would be in black. That's going to help create a real nice anchor in your staff members and their minds on what you're talking about. And you can go to Unsplash, which is totally free, where you can type in the word blue or yellow and get up a whole bunch of dynamic and diverse photos with those colors that you can help with your presentation. So create presentations that have only one color, except for, of course, the text, that would help anchor that subject in the mind of your staff members.
Rock on. Camp Code is part of the Go Camp Pro podcast network. Check out all our other podcasts at gocamp.pro/podcast. Stay tuned for our next episode. And from all of us here at Camp Code, thanks for the listening, friends.